This month's podcasts are sponsored by Aubergine Legal. Do you sometimes worry that your business isn't meeting all its legal compliance requirements and wonder if you're ticking all the legal boxes? Are you losing sleep worrying about a piece of legislation that you may or may not be complying with? Perhaps you need some help with your client contracts or your data protection compliance. Or maybe you're worried that your website doesn't have the right documents or legal notices in the right place. Perhaps you have a brand that you want to protect with a trademark. How about if you could outsource it all and eliminate all of your worries? If so, then get in touch with Aubergine Legal, a friendly commercial legal consultancy offering practical and clear commercial legal advice without the overwhelming legal jargon, taking the worry away and helping you to protect your business and minimise your risks. Aubergine offers a free 30-minute consultation if you have any questions or want to find out if they can help, and you can access this link and book your free 30-minute call via the link in the show notes. Welcome to the Bring Your Product Idea to Life podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're getting started selling products or if you'd like to create your own product to sell. I'm Vicky Weinberg, a product creation coach and Amazon expert. Every week I share friendly, practical advice as well as inspirational stories from small businesses. Let's get started. So today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Stephanie from Bibinee Dolls. So Stephanie creates early years soft diversity dolls which help to encourage learning through play and positive representation. I came across Stephanie online, loved her products and invited her onto the podcast. I was so glad she joined me. We just had a fantastic conversation. I was actually really surprised because before speaking to Stephanie, I didn't realise how new her business was. And when she talks to you about how much she's done in the last few months, I think you're going to be as amazed as I was. So it was a really great conversation. Stephanie has such a clear vision. She's so passionate. She talks a lot about the inspiration for her dolls, the process of creating them, and I think there is so much that we all can learn from this. So I would love now to introduce you to Stephanie. So hi Stephanie, thank you so much for being here.
Hi Vicky.
Can you start by giving an introduction to yourself, your business and what you sell, please?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Stephanie Mensah. I'm 44, mum of two. I currently reside in London, so I'm in South London at the moment. My background is in project management, so IT procurement management. Nothing related to what I do, but that's what I kind of do at the moment. In terms of my business, I currently make early years diversity soft plush dolls. The reason why I started the business is 3 years ago, I had my two children, and the nursery that both of my children go to doesn't have much diversity within the nursery when it comes to their toys. And I thought it was very important that this be something that they have exposure to, especially since myself, obviously growing up in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't anything like that out there. And I really wanted my children to have the opportunity to have that representation. So that's really the background as to why I kickstarted the business.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So for anyone who hasn't yet looked at your website, which of course we'll link in the show notes, everyone can go across and have a look. But if anyone who hasn't looked or maybe driving can't look right now, can you just tell us a bit about your dolls, some of the dolls in your range, what they look like? Just describe them for us.
Yeah, cool. So we have a few series in terms of the dolls. So we launched with the Mabel doll series, and that consists of 4 dolls who all have 4 different outfits. The story behind Mabel is actually then named after my late mum. So originally I'm from Ghana in West Africa. And I thought it was really important to have dolls that represent a cultural influence as well. So 2 of the dolls wear one fabric which is called kente, which is normally worn by royalty in Ghana. So it very much synced into the whole of the idea of being a princess, so kind of like a Ghanaian princess. And then the other fabric is Ankara, which is commonly worn in West Africa as well. And then growing up, I've always been into fairy tales. So I've always loved unicorns. I thought, well, why don't we do a unicorn doll as well? And then we also have another doll which wears hearts. So that's the Mabel Doll series. And then obviously having my son, I realized that there wasn't much black or brown boy dolls, especially within the soft doll marketplace. And so I created two boy dolls, one which is called Reese and the other one which is called Kojo, which is named after my son. Reese has a dinosaur top, because my son is just besotted with dinosaurs. We watch that all day. And then Kojo is wearing a tracksuit which says Little King. Growing up, his dad really tries to put a lot of positive affirmations in him to let him know that, when he grows up, he can become anything that he wants to be. So it was important for us to reflect that within a doll. So one of the top says Little King on his tracksuit as well. And then speaking to our friends and family and just going out and really doing a lot of market research, we also introduced Amira, who is Islamic doll. So she's wearing a hijab, and it was really based upon the fact that within the Black community, obviously there's Muslim is a large religion within the Black community. There wasn't any dolls that reflected that. And so we thought it'd be great for us to introduce that into the collection as well. And then we actually launched a doll in February at the baby show, and a large part of our audience had really said that had come from a multicultural background, so a mixed heritage background, and they had also felt that there weren't any dolls that reflected mixed heritage children. So it would either be Caucasian or from an Afro-Caribbean background. So we created Zara. So Zara and Reese are our two mixed heritage dolls. So that's the collection so far. And then we're hoping to release Sky, who will be our neutral doll, so for either a boy or a girl.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for talking us through that, because I've obviously been on your website and seen your dolls, and they're beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
And so I thought it was really important for you to explain to people so they can just understand the range of dolls that you have. And thank you for explaining how that's grown as well. We're going to go back a little bit, if that's okay. So Stephanie, you mentioned that you had was it your daughter you had first?
My son.
Your son first. And then was that this inspiration for thinking that you wanted to create your dolls?
Yeah, so we actually we had to change nurseries about 6-7 months ago, and we were really restricted in terms of what nursery we could put him into, because his old nursery had closed down all of it, quite suddenly, and we had done a settling in day with him. And in that particular nursery that we had gone into, there was only one other Black child within the nursery. And immediately all the children there were like, oh, is that your brother? That's your brother. And it was really, really innocent, because to them, they had seen another boy with a similar skin tone to the boy who was currently within the nursery. And then when we had a quick look around, we realized that actually there wasn't much diversity within the nursery. So immediately that's the reason why the children had associated my son with the other little boy that was in the nursery. And so we did some research into it, and we said, for us it was really important that children from early years, so there's a lot of dolls on the market at the moment, plastic dolls, but they really start from an age group from, I would say, maybe 5 or 6 years upwards, but it was nothing that really targeted early years, so from birth. And looking into it, we noticed that children really start to grasp identification of, where their eyes are, nose are, the color of their skin, their hair, really from the age of 1 year old. And this is what we wanted to do, to introduce it to families and to also introduce it into childcare facilities. And that's really where the idea was born. So it was from that little comment that that child had made in the nursery that made us just realise that actually this is a common problem. And then when we spoke with quite a few mums and my friends who may have moved to slightly more remote areas, we were coming up with the same thing, that there isn't really much representation there. And also that the children who were not of Black heritage actually welcomed having dolls of a different colour as well. And so that was really great to find out as well.
Thank you for explaining all that. And I think until I had my own children, I actually didn't notice how early children pick up on these things. I just assumed that little children didn't. And it wasn't until I had my own that I went, oh, actually, kids pay real attention. And they notice what people look like, and they notice who looks like them and who looks different to them, and all of these things they do. And I really assumed that little kids wouldn't and didn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's a common analogy that says, children are blind to colour. And I think that the correction that people want to say is children don't see race. So there's no such thing as racism when you're a child. There's differences, but there's not racism. And in fact, I mean, my son, his best friend is white, and he has ginger hair. So that's, and that's his closest best friend of all. But it's important for us to be able to teach our children the differences. So, and it's not just skin color. I mean, it just so happens that obviously we've created dolls that represent the Black and brown community, but there's lots of other diversity issues out there. There's children with disabilities, there's different skin disorders that children may have. There's so many other variances, and it's important for us to teach children that to be different is fine, and to educate them on that, so that they don't grow up not having that empathy for people who are different to them. And I think that's, for us, one of the key messages that we want to really send out there.
Absolutely. And then I think there's also probably the side of that it's really nice for a child to have a doll that they feel represents them as well from a really young age. Because as you say, I've seen lots of, there's definitely more diversity in the plastic kind of dolls aimed at older children.
Yes.
But yeah, I think until I came across your brand, I don't think I've seen a brand for newborns that does that.
Yeah, that not a lot of people, if anything, I mean, I don't want to put myself on a record, but we've done some market research and it's very limited. There are soft Black and brown dolls out there, but again, they're very kind of more for presentation, so to look really nice in the nursery. Whereas when we created our dolls, we wanted them to be really durable, because, if kids are like my daughter, for example, they're going to be tugged, dribbled on. They're going to go through it. And it was really important that when we created the dolls that we could, we made sure that they weren't really there for presentation purposes, and that a typical 1-year-old would be able to use the doll. And also we made it machine washable as well. Because, my daughter, she'll get Weetabix on her soft dolls, like literally I'm washing every single day. So it was important for us to make sure that we could machine wash it, and it was a good enough size as well, so that it could also just be used as not just a doll, but a comforter. So I don't know about you, but in terms of my daughter, so she slept with us for a long time. We still have instances where she comes and sleeps in our bed, and she's 14 months old. And so transitioning her from the big bed to her own bed was an ongoing process. And so what we did was we introduced one of the dolls to her so that it became more of a comfort, so that now when we put her into her cot, she's sleeping with one of the dolls. And, when she wakes up, all of a sudden, she doesn't feel that she's alone. There's a doll next to her to give her that comfort and soothe her back to sleep. So yeah, it was overall a process there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There isn't a lot on the market at all, and that's one of the reasons why we really want to drive awareness and get it into the big stores as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, if that's okay. So you've spoken a lot about sort of your dolls, and I can tell so much thought and care has gone into the design of them. Can you talk a little bit more about that, please? Because I think it's amazing. You had such a clear vision. You knew what you wanted your dolls to be and how, and all of this. But how did you go from having that vision and those ideas to actually having your physical product there? Because that's quite a process, and you've done it all reasonably quickly as well.
Yeah, we did. A lot of research. So as you said, we knew what we wanted. I knew, I guess I could say I knew what I didn't want. So I'd seen what was on the market and I didn't want that. So I wanted to make sure that I had the complete opposite. So we went on a rampage. We looked at various distributors. So I already had the designs in my head. I reached out to a couple of illustrators who created the designs based upon the ideas that I had. And then from then I went into various platforms. So I actually reached out to companies who already produced soft plush dolls, and I ordered a few in, and then I sampled it myself to see the quality of them. I washed them several times just to make sure. And then based upon that, I then reached out to them and said, look, I would like to customize my own doll. Is this something that you can do, or is something you'd be willing to work with us on? And a few of them said, no, we only do our own brand dolls. We don't customize. And then I was lucky enough to get two that said that they do. And so we then did the designs with the two. One still wasn't quite working out right, and then the second one was just perfect, and so we went with them. So it was a bit of a process, and then obviously when they were creating a doll, it's proofing it, sending samples, making sure that we're happy with it, and we went back and forth a few times until we got it to where we wanted it to be.
That's brilliant. And yeah, I feel like you definitely sound like the sort of person who just decides to do something and goes for it. And I mean, there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, well, I should say it's not my first business that I've done. I actually come from a family of, I wouldn't call it small businesses. So my mum has ran several small businesses in the past. When I was younger, I'd walk with her door to door to houses. She would do, somebody would buy items from her and then they would lease it from her. So I kind of got the sales angle from her. And she'd always said to me, if it's something that you believe in, that you're passionate about, go for it. If it fails, just try again or just change the model. But don't give up. If you've got the idea, see it through as far as you can do. And then, you're going to come across challenges. And that's what sometimes the challenges is what allows you to know whether you have an actual good business idea. If it's going too well, sometimes that's a bit of a sign. But, you need to have those obstacles. You need to have other people and companies challenging your idea for you to know whether you've made the right decision or not.
And have you had many challenges out of interest?
Yeah, so I've had knockbacks. So certain platforms that I thought, would jump at the chance of this particular product have said, no, it's not for them. They don't feel they have the marketplace or the audience for it. And I guess you have that inner, that inner self that says, okay, well, I'm going to show you, look at me in, 2-3 years time. But then at the same time, it's also understanding that your business or your product isn't going to be for everybody. It may only be for selected stores or selected audience, and that's okay. You don't have to create something that appeases everybody or that everybody wants, but you need to create something that a big enough audience will want. So obviously you can make some profit and income from it. And I think it was just realizing that, because, when I had my first few knockbacks, I took it personally, quite personally. And I thought, have I made the right decision here? Should I have changed this? Maybe should I have done dolls that reflect all races instead of just doing black and brown dolls? So you really start to question your idea and your motive. And then it's just kind of sitting back and reflecting on why you did it, what you're trying to achieve, what your goal is, and then really stay in the course.
And I think you're right as well that your products or nobody's products will be for everyone. And but I think that's sometimes a hard thing to realize, even though I think most of us know that, but I think your first real reminder of that can be feel like a bit of a setback.
Yeah, definitely. And, we do pop-ups as well. So we've recently started doing like little pop-ups, market stalls. And again, it's not going to be for everyone. But then when you do, like, I could do a pop-up, maybe it might be quiet for the first few hours. And then I'll get this little girl running up to the stall and she's like, Mommy, Daddy, look, this doll, I really, really want it. And then just that look alone just reinforces, I know I'm doing the right thing. And then it just pushes you to continue what you're doing, because I know I made her day. So I know she walked away that day not expecting to see our dolls, saw it, fell in love with it, and now that's her best friend. And for me, that's an achievement.
That's lovely. And let's talk a little bit about stockists, if that's okay, Stephanie. So is finding places to stock your dolls, was that always part of your plan?
Yes. So when I created this, I always knew that I wanted to do B2B sales, so business to business. Again, I do want to obviously maintain the business to consumer side. Obviously, that's where the passion comes into it. But my business plan was always, in order for me to create that awareness and to reach a wide marketplace, I felt that the products would be suited to businesses, and it could be either a boutique business or it could be more mainstream business, to allow them to have the dolls within their facility so that it could reach their audience as well. So that was always on my agenda.
And how have you gone about finding stockists?
Good old internet. Back in the day it was Yellow Pages, but we won't go there. But yeah, the good old internet, and Instagram has been a great aid. Pinterest, I never think I'm saying it right. And it was just looking at each stockist or retailer, looking at what's currently stocked within their stores at the moment, and just seeing, would my dolls be a good fit for their store? Will it create the attention or the awareness that we're looking for? So that's literally part of our daily activities. Is we'll look at toy magazines. So we look at Toy World quite a lot. We'll go into the internet, we'll do research, and then we'll look for stockists, and then we'll approach them directly, either via Instagram, or we'll reach out to them via email, or even just a simple phone call. I think sometimes we forget the basics of networking and, creating that relationship, and just picking up the phone and calling somebody and having a conversation is just as powerful as using social media. So yeah, that's really what we do.
And you're right, it is really nice because I know even with our friends and family, sometimes it's so easy not to pick up the phone. So I can see that probably would go down well.
Yes. And I think sometimes they're taken aback because they think, oh, they called me. But I think what I had to remember is a lot of so my stockists are a mixture of old and new. So some of them, they've been running these either gift stores or toy shops for many, many years. So they've gone through the whole cycle. And so they're very used to how things used to work. And I think they appreciate, that one-to-one connection, as opposed to, an email or an Instagram, because sometimes, I met somebody on Saturday, and he said to me, I'm going to Insta you. And I said, what does Insta mean? Because I don't know. This is something new to me. But, he said, he'd had to adapt to how things are going at the moment, but he very rarely checks his emails. He doesn't do it. He just doesn't know how to do it, but he will check his text messages, for example. So I think it's just understanding your stockish, your audience, and the right method of communication that will best suit them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned earlier on that you were at the baby show earlier this year when you launched your latest doll. So how did that go?
Yeah, so that was actually the launch. So we launched in February this year. When I tell people, they're like, "What?" Yeah, I should say, we did a soft launch in December to see if the business model really worked. So we did a soft launch in December, and that's when we thought, yeah, this is really, really going to do well. And then we did the official launch. We registered the business, did the official launch in February, and the baby show was in March. And it was scary to go into a big environment like that, because I think for us it was a true test of whether do we have something that will relate to a varied audience. And I'm not sure if many of your members know, but obviously the baby show is an annual event. So there's 4 that happens throughout the year. We chose to go to the one in Excel, which happened in March, and it's a 3-day event, and it's really targeted towards new parents or existing parents. So you can get to look at some of the products that you normally see online, you can get to test it, and then you can meet companies like us who are brand new into the industry. But we got a really good reaction, and that's what made us realize that actually, although our dolls are black and brown dolls, it's not just for the black and brown community, it's for everybody. We had a lot of parents who were not from a black heritage who came up and said, I want my child to be able to know that there are differences. And at the moment, my child only has dolls with blonde hair, blue eyes, and we want them to know that there is there's a variety, and in fact their best friend is a black girl, or their best friend is an Asian girl, and so for them it was really, really great and refreshing to see, and then for the parents who are from the black and brown community, it was like, oh my God, where have you been? I've been looking for something like this for so long. I really want my daughter or my son to see himself or herself in a positive light. And this is just, everything. And so that really cemented the idea. And then from then we've just been going from strength to strength.
Well, that's amazing. And I didn't pick up on this earlier, but I was actually thinking that even having boy dolls, I think, is another difference. Yes. Because I remember my son being 2 and wanting a baby doll and wanting a boy baby doll. And I was really surprised that, and this was like a hard but baby, but I was actually surprised at how little choice there were of male baby dolls at the time as well. That really surprised me. I assumed that dolls were of both genders, but
no, I mean, it's funny that you should say that, because when we launched it at the baby show, and I think the issue you have is there's a lot of stereotypes. So, as soon as somebody is having a boy, or they find out the gender is going to be a boy, immediately they're either linked to playing with dinosaurs, trucks, everything is already kind of paved out for them. And we had a lot of really interesting conversations with not mums, funny enough, but dads. So a lot of dads were very hesitant to have their child playing with a doll because they saw it as a doll. And we spent a lot of time, and that's why I think sometimes these shows are really great, because when if they were online, they would never have this interaction. But face to face, you're able to really break it down to them why it's important that whether it's a boy or a girl, that they have access to be able to have imaginative play with a doll that represents them, that looks like them, that is also a boy. But yeah, there's a lot of stereotypes. A lot of the dads were very against, no, I only want my son to be playing with a car, and I don't want my son. And, the mums were like, no. And some dads gave in, and some dads were very headstrong and, were like, no. It's not going to happen. And I think because of that, that has influenced manufacturers and toy makers out there as well, because they immediately, you say a doll and it's linked to a girl. And so for commercial reasons, the industry has focused more of its time producing girl dolls as opposed to boy dolls, because it just doesn't want to go through that whole convincing, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But when we released our girl dolls, our mums were upset. They said, but where's the boys? I want one for my son. And that's what really pushed us to, we weren't going to release a boy doll until probably towards the end of the year, for financial reasons, because we were, we had a lot of stock. And, we did our focus groups and they said, no, we want our boys. And they are doing so well.
That's really good to hear. And I do wonder whether, and I guess that possibly things will start to shift over the next
100%,
couple of years.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the reason why we actually created Sky as well, because Sky is our gender neutral doll. And we found that actually when we was at the baby show, some of the dolls that we had there were very much girlified. So, they were wearing pink or purple, which, typical kind of girly colours. And parents were coming back and saying, I'm actually tired of seeing pink and purple. I want to see a different colour. I want to see a neutral colour. And so we decided to come up with Sky, which was gender neutral. So it didn't matter whether it was a boy or a girl. It was just a baby doll, and they could play with it. And I think that really intrigued parents as well, and they were really happy about that. And we haven't released it yet, but we've got it on pre-order, and that's receiving a lot of interest as well.
That's really good to hear. And so, are these shows just purely out of interest for anyone listening, considering doing something similar? Are they also good ways to find stockists? Do you get buyers and people like that attending?
Yeah, you get a few. So usually on day one, so Fridays are usually, so it's usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the big trade shows. So Fridays are usually meant for your influencers, your social media influencers, your stockists. So it's typically more of a quiet day. So you get to have really good conversations. I think it's also great because you get to meet other baby brands or other brands within your marketplace that you could potentially collaborate with. And I think that's something that people also forget as well. We recently did a collaboration with a baby food brand called For Aisha, and it went really, really, really well. We are marketing to the same audience. We just have two different products. So it was, why don't we just come together, do a campaign, do a giveaway, and then get followers from both of our audiences following each other, and then gain more followers that way. And so, yeah, if you do decide to go to any of these events, do your research first. I would always say attend one as just a normal person. So I had attended the baby show when I was pregnant with my son. So I knew what it was about. I knew what to expect. And so if I hadn't have done that, I'm not too sure if I would have gone forward with it. So I'd say always do your research first as well because they can be quite expensive. So you want to make sure that, it's going to have the right audience for you. And it also allows you to decide what products you're going to take to the show and, how your marketing is going to be as well.
That's really great advice. Thank you. I have another question specifically about toys, if that's okay, because obviously toys, particularly if they've been given to newborns, have to meet certain, I don't know how to say it, requirements, legislation. They need to be certified, basically, don't they?
Yes.
How do you go about that process? And is it like really hard? I'm asking because I feel like it's something that can sometimes intimidate people. Stephanie, you don't seem like someone who does get intimidated, which is great. But it would be great to just hear a little bit about how you went about that and what your experience was, because I think there might be people listening who would really find that reassuring.
So again, it's a lot. It's research. So it's looking at other toys which are in the market. So we actually went onto Amazon first. So we know that to trade on Amazon, you really have to have everything in order, or even to trade in a big retailer, because they're putting themselves at risk of trading your product. So they need to make sure that it's passed all the relative checks. So we looked at, we weren't ready for Amazon when we first launched. We're on Amazon now, but we looked at what are the requirements that Amazon want from a manufacturer, from a brand, basically. And it was a long list. And we said, okay, let's start targeting to make sure that we have all of this. So once we knew what was required, we then went to the manufacturer and said, this is what required. Do you meet this? Can you get this? And they literally started ticking off the boxes. So we learned that in order for our products to trade within Europe, they need to be CE certified. They also need to be UKCA as well. And we also know that because of the market, the audience, so the age range that we are targeting, they need to be fully tested for any toxins within the dolls as well. So from the fabrics that are being used. And so again, our manufacturers were really great because they had all these testings and they had all the requirements, and they kind of made our jobs a little bit easy. So we didn't have to go and get an EAN or SKU codes. That was all provided for us, and that was part of the cost of them producing the dolls for us. So I guess maybe we pay a slightly marked up rate for our dolls because it includes all of those checks. But if you were somebody who makes the dolls yourself, so obviously we design our dolls, but we don't hand make them ourselves. It's handmade by our manufacturers. You would need to, have this list, and then, it will show you, if you go into gov.uk, it actually tells you that to trade, whether it's a doll or any type of product, what you need to have. And then it's just following those steps.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I think you're right. If you're working with a manufacturer, presumably they should be doing all of these things already in order to manufacture toys in this example. So they should be, it would be worrying if they weren't up to date on the legislation, wouldn't it? So I think that's good to hear. But you're right. If you're making your products another way, then you definitely need to be clear on what's required.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to change subject just a tiny bit, that's okay, Stephanie, because I want to talk really quickly about sustainability, because I saw on your website that you do have a sustainability policy and there are certain things you're doing. And I just thought it'd be nice to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, of course. So for us, part of our research and developing the dolls is, we're quite big on sustainability. We really wanted to make sure that the dolls were eco-friendly as well. And it was important that the dolls were made in a environment which supported, equal rights, equal pay. And so these are all the things that, when we were looking at manufacturers, that we took into consideration. So I guess it may have made our journey of finding the manufacturer who's producing our dolls a bit longer, because we wanted to make sure that it passed all of this. But it was very important to us that it contains those elements as well. In terms of how the dolls are produced, so the dolls are made using polyester, but we use recycled polyester fillings for the inside. And then in terms of packaging, we're very conscious in terms of recycling. So we make sure that all of our packaging is biodegradable. And that was one of the reasons why when we created the dolls, we made sure that everything was engraved. So all the features are engraved. We don't use plastic eyes or we don't use anything plastic on the dolls because they don't decompose as well. Basically. So we're trying our best. I mean, moving forwards, obviously as a small business, sometimes it's hard to really utilize everything when it comes to trying to be sustainable, because then your price range just pushes higher and higher. And obviously we want the doll to be marketed at a price that is affordable for most families, or the majority of families. But moving forward, it's definitely something that we want to continue to push. And we're hoping that we may be able to launch dolls which are fully recyclable and biodegradable, and we can use materials that are, a lot more friendly to the environment as well.
That's amazing. Thanks for explaining all of that. I love how clear you are on everything that you want. I should also point out to everyone that we're recording this in very, very early June, and you launched in February. So you've done a lot.
Thank you. I think it's because I'm just so passionate. It's myself and my husband who run the business, just so passionate about it. And I just think there's there's a gap in the market for it. And I think when you release something and your audience or your customer and your client base continuously tell you how appreciative they are that it's there, it just pushes you, drives you to continue. And we just have so many big plans for the brand moving forwards that, for us, every time I talk about it, I have a smile on my face because I'm just excited about how the future is going to look.
Oh, good. And so you should be. I think it is really exciting. And I've got one final question, Stephanie, if that's okay, which is, what would your number one piece of advice be for other product creators?
Oh, where do I start? I think I mentioned some of this earlier on. So use your environment around you, so your friends and your family. When I first launched a product, I reached out to friends and family just to get their gist on it. What do you think? I actually sent out probably about 10 to 20 dolls actually to friends and family for free. I just wanted their children to be able to play with it, just get that feedback from them, whether good or bad, just let me know. And I got a mixture of feedback. I had people say, "Oh, it's too expensive," or "Can it do this?" or "Can you do this color? Can you do this hairstyle?" And some of the feedback you're able to take on board, and obviously you can change it or reflect it in your end product. And some of them, sometimes you have to park it for now. I never say disregard it, because that, again, feedback is feedback. It may not be feedback that you want to hear right now, but it's feedback. So maybe all you need to do is just park it for now, and then in the future, look into it at some point. So I guess for me, anybody who's considering launching a product, use your community or your family around you, your friends and family, just to get an idea of what they think about the product. And then I don't think you're ever going to be certain about the decision that that you've made. I don't think you're ever going to be concrete, but I think as much as you can, if you have a plan, try and stick to the plan as much as possible. Try not to deviate. It's very easy to try and have your fingers in lots of pies because you're just eager to kind of get everywhere. I mean, somebody said to me, if you're going to market, choose two main marketing mediums and focus on it, because there's so many social media marketing avenues. There's so many paper. I said to somebody the other day, do you read blogs? And they said, blogs? What's a blog? It's all about podcasts now. It's like, oh, well. So I think don't try and do too many things all at once at the same time, because you'll either burn yourself out or you won't be able to fully present yourself in the correct way within that medium. So try and just, pick a select few, focus on that. And not obviously, hopefully, if things go well, you can then develop a team. And then obviously, it then becomes a full-blown business moving forward. So I think that those would be my two key things. You use your audience around you, and just try and remain focused and not try and do too many things at a time. And I guess also I'll add one more: be patient.
That's a really
have
good
patience.
advice.
Yeah, have patience. It may not happen today or tomorrow. I mean, we do a lot of PR. We send a lot of PR press releases, and for every 50 we send out, we may get one response. But just keep going. It doesn't mean that it's the wrong method. It just means that that person doesn't need your product right now, but they may need it at some point. So just keep going, have patience, and keep going strong.
That's such good advice. All of it, everything you said, I completely agree with, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything you've shared.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening right to the end of this episode. Do remember that you can get the full back catalogue and lots of free resources on my website, vickyweinberg.com. Please do remember to rate and review this episode if you've enjoyed it, and also share it with a friend who you think might find it useful. Thank you again, and see you next week. If you've been inspired to start a podcast in 2024, I really recommend my podcast host, Captivate. Captivate were my top pick when I started podcasting 4 years ago because of how easy it was for a complete novice like me to get started. I've stuck with them for the last 4 years because Captivate is still really simple to use. They keep adding great new features like the ability to share ads like these, and they've just been really reliable. So when you're ready to start your own podcast, you can use the link in the show notes and get a free 7-day trial with Captivate.